All right, in this episode, we're going to go over three different levels. As you guys can see, we're going to go the sewer, the lab, and then finish out with the train yard. So, as you guys can see, we're in the sewer. If you ever play this game, you know the sewer is probably your biggest headache. Was the first time you probably cursed the game out. Maybe you quit. Maybe you haven't even got past the sewer. And I kind of anticipated that because I created this level difficult on purpose. I want you guys to feel like a sense of purpose, of honor, like when you actually beat it. But yeah, I just want to talk about some of the inspirations. As you can see, there's alligators in the water. But yeah, I wanted to kind of create this level this way, and you can kind of see the alligator there. Boom, there we go. Because I wanted it to be like a lot of crazy stuff is happening in the sewers in New York. But then also too, I wanted to create a little bit more of a puzzle element where you have to go around collecting the letters for this word, which actually means to not feel sensation, to not feel anything. And that's essentially what a zombie is. You can see one of the zombies here. Notice that they're chained up. And, the idea behind that is, like I said, they were down here. They're being held hostage because they either were experiments that gone bad or they will be used for future experiments later. But, I just want to kind of create a feeling of like there's so many crazy hidden things under the train. And as you can see, I get a letter here. Some of the big inspirations for this was I wanted you to have a level where you actually need the zombies. Need the flashlight where it's really dark. As you can see, when you turn around this corner, you can't see anything until the light comes on. There are points where there's lights, obviously, but I wanted to create it really, really dark. You obviously can't see until you go there. But also, too, I wanted the player to get really smart and creative and start to use the zombies' fire as a light source throughout the game. Probably my biggest inspiration for this level as I exit out of it is Resident Evil's shark level. I remember playing Resident Evil. There was no water at all until you got to this level. When you saw the screen cracked, you were like, "What the?" And you start to see these little sharks. You're just freaking out, like, "What is going on?" Then you see that huge shark, and you just get like super petrified, like, "What kind of video game is this?" I didn't think this was gonna happen. You know what I mean? So I kind of wanted to create that same feel of like, wow, there's alligators now. And I think everyone listening to this, if you played it, you have seen and got killed by plenty of alligators during your time. Another huge inspiration for me from Resident Evil was the lab. Um, Honestly, the only reason why there is a lab in my game was because there's a lab in Resident Evil. Now, obviously, I did a lot of different things as far as like, the way the lab's set up, and then also, the mask. But if you notice here, let me close this out. In Resident Evil, if you guys remember this last level, and the lab is one of the last levels in the game as well. It's actually the last level you unlock. I wanted it to be towards the end, but also too to really reveal the story. So you see how she's using the computer, where you turn it on. She's going in. It's kind of like the old school computer here. And there's a lot of computers, and you learn a lot about the story. And I remember as a kid playing Resident Evil, and I was just like, oh my God, like this story is so freaking good. And it got even scarier when I started to learn about the doctors and some of the experiments that were happening through the computer telling stories. I may be wrong. I haven't played Resident Evil 1 in a long time, but I think there may be a point in the game where you have to collect information from the computer and use it to unlock a door, something like that, or something to do with numbers. So I wanted mine to be the same way. Obviously, it's 2018, so we have laptops, things like that, which wasn't in Resident Evil. But I wanted the same thing. You hit a button, you learn a little bit more about the game story. In addition to that, we do have the desktop set up. It is a flat screen, but we do have the desktop get set up. Put the audio on for you guys because I'm very happy with the breathing. Yeah, I wanted to put that in there. And the idea behind the green is that, let me move that, is that there obviously was a gas leak. So if you were to play the game, you saw that they were doing experiments here, gassing these zombies. Let me put the code in so you guys can see what I was talking about. I don't even know if I remember the code. Yeah, 1983 was my birthday. It's my birth year, I should say. So that's why that's the code. But nonetheless, you can see here that there was a human experiment with some of the same guys that came from the first level, Jason Street. They were kidnapped as well and thrown into this gas chamber, and they all got killed. And they turned into zombies, and they're all gonna come kill you in a second. So let me get out of there. But yeah, I wanted to kind of have a like collective fuse kind of situation, um, and kind of combine everything that you learned, throughout the game. So you can see some of the xenomorphs here mixed with those zombies, and then believe it or not, when you collect all of the fuses, when you get to this door, there's two monsters on the lab table, and one of those monsters actually turns out to be the final boss of the game, which is I don't think anybody really caught that. There's when you watch the video, the monster gets up, you hear a monster get up, and he's actually just running to 29th Street, which we'll talk more about in a second. But he's actually running to 29th Street because he's pretty much getting ready to kill you. So it's a little history on that. But yeah, huge inspiration for from Resident Evil. Lastly, the train yard that actually was inspired by real life events. So let me just type in my Instagram. Actually, you can definitely go to Cyber Gaming to always get the updates on everything. Facebook, YouTube is all here. But yeah, the huge inspiration here was from actual real train yard in Brooklyn. So when I lived in New York, I used to take this train every day. Not every day, almost every day. And I used to see this train yard all the time. And I used to just stare at it. And I used to think to myself, God, like that would be so cool to have like a train yard in my game. So I was like, you know what? Screw it. Get it. Do it. So here's the real life train yard, Broadway Junction, if you ever wanted to go in New York City to actually see it. It's actually a lot nicer than mine. But yeah, I wanted to do something very similar. And when I grew up, there's always dogs in train yards. So I was like, okay, the dogs are only in the break room area. So I wanted to include those dogs in another area besides just the break room because I felt like I worked so hard on getting them all set up and programming them. So I was like, you know what, just use that same program for this. But anyway, as you can see here, a lot of rain. The train yard, like I mentioned, a lot of rain here. In addition to that, you can see the helicopter. So the second biggest inspiration for this level was also 211 CK, my very first mobile game, which I mentioned earlier. You guys can see the rain. The second level has the exact same rain in it. It also has that exact same helicopter in the beginning of the game of 211 CK. So this was like I always joke that this is a 211 CK level. But at the same time too, I wanted to show like nice dogs because I felt like the dogs in the other level was all crazy and they just attack crazy. So I wanted to show dogs that behave themselves. They don't bother you unless you bother them. So you can get pretty close to them, but if you get too close, I think they both attack actually. Yeah, one attacks you high, one attacks you low. So yeah, that's the idea. They only get close if you get close. This dog is roaming around, so he'll attack eventually. Um, but he's more like a guard dog. But yeah, there's plenty of good dogs. There's a secret dog over here too. Just showing that there are good dogs out there. So, all right, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed that. Last but not least, I was going to think about putting like a flying dragon or something crazy up in the sky. But I think I'm going to save that for the sequel. You guys see more what I'm talking about later.